Okay, so think about those massive projects that literally shape nations. We're talking bridges, highways, dams. There's a global gold standard for the contracts behind them. It's called FIDIC. It's designed to make everything fair, efficient, perfect. But here's the thing. When this perfect blueprint landed in Latin America, it kind of shattered. Today, we're going to dig into why.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right? What happens when the perfect solution ends up creating an even bigger problem? I mean, a system that's literally designed to stop arguments ends up sparking more of them. That's really the heart of the story we're unpacking today. How a perfect plan can totally backfire when it crashes into the real world.
All right, so to really get this, we have to start at the beginning. Let's talk about the promise of FIDIC. Why on earth was everyone so excited about these contracts in the first place? What made them seem like such a game changer?
And you gotta understand, this wasn't some small niche thing happening in a corner. We are talking about a massive, recent shift all across Latin America. Huge, publicly funded projects started using these FIDIC contracts, especially the ones backed by big players like the Inter-American Development Bank. So yeah, this is a very big deal with literally billions of dollars at stake.
And when you look at it on paper, you can see why. The benefits seem like a no-brainer. You get a standardized framework that everyone in the world understands. You get crystal clear rules for when things change or when people disagree. It's all about transparency, fairness, balancing the power between the client and the contractor. I mean, it's designed to build trust and stop those messy, expensive fights that can derail these huge projects. In theory, it's absolutely flawless.
So how does it actually do all that? Well, the FIDIC system introduces two brand new, really critical roles. You can think of them as the new referees on the field, the engineer and the board. Their whole job is to be impartial and keep the game running smoothly. So first, you have the FIDIC engineer. Now, on one hand, this person is a technical expert who supervises the project for the employer, the public agency that's paying the bills. But, and this is the big twist, if a claim or a dispute comes up, that same engineer is required to switch hats and act as a totally neutral party, even though their paycheck is signed by the very people they might have to rule against. You can probably already see where some tension might start to build. And then you've got the DAB. That stands for Dispute Avoidance and Adjudication Board. The name says it all, really. This is a panel of independent experts, and the key thing is they're on the project from day one. They're not just there to solve disputes. Their main job is to prevent them from ever happening. And if a problem does pop up, they step in and make a quick, binding decision to keep the whole project from grinding to a halt. It's all about being proactive, not reactive.
Okay, so you've got this brilliant, balanced system, you've got neutral referees. It sounds perfect, right? But in Latin America, this whole setup just ran smack into a wall. And it wasn't a loud, obvious, we hate this kind of rejection. The source material calls it a silent resistance, which I think is a perfect way to put it.
And this table really gets to the why behind that resistance. You have to look at what came before. Traditionally, public contracts in the region were completely one-sided. The public entity, the government, held all the power. They dominated everything. Then FIDIC rolls in and says, whoa, hold on. We're going to make this balanced. We're going to make this a collaborative partnership. That's not just changing a few words in a document. That is a fundamental ground-shaking shift in power.
But here's the thing. This goes so much deeper than just legal clauses and paperwork. What we're really talking about is a clash of mindsets, a clash of cultures and expectations that have been built up over decades.
And this one quote right here, honestly, it captures the entire problem in a single sentence. How can someone I pay decide against me? I mean, just think about that. It perfectly sums up the mental hurdle for these public entities. The whole idea of the engineer's neutrality, that someone on their payroll could make an impartial decision that costs them money, it's completely alien. It doesn't compute.
And that core distrust, it just spiders out into all these other problems. That engineer's neutrality, it's not seen as being fair, it's seen as interference. The DA, which is supposed to be this fast, cheap way to avoid problems, it gets confused with super expensive formal arbitration, so people avoid it. And, boiling under all of this is just a deep reluctance to give up that old power dynamic. And it's not helped by the fact that there's often a serious lack of training on how this new system is even supposed to function.
So, what happens when you ignore the rule book? What happens when you resist and misunderstand the very system you're supposed to be using? Well, this theoretical clash of mindsets has very real, very tangible, and very, very expensive consequences.
And here is the absolute ultimate irony of the whole situation.
The system that was specifically designed to reduce disputes and make things smoother ends up creating more of them. It's a total backfire. When you don't let the engineer be neutral and you sideline the DAB, you get the exact opposite of everything you wanted. Conflicts blow up, project management becomes biased and opaque, and more cases end up in the one place nobody wanted to be, tangled up in years of costly, painful arbitration.
And look, this isn't just a theory. There are real-world examples. Take the case of Servium versus MOPC. It's a textbook example of what happens when you ignore the system. Because there was no functioning dispute board in place, the case went to arbitration. But the arbitrators couldn't even start talking about the actual disagreement. No, they had to spend months and a ton of money just arguing about whether they even had the right to hear the case in the first place. It just perfectly shows how trying to sidestep the process just adds more layers of time, cost, and frustration.
Okay, so it sounds pretty bleak, right? The system seems broken, but it's not a hopeless situation. The source material is actually really clear that there is a path forward. So, how do we fix it? How do we build that bridge from this broken blueprint to a successful project?
Really, it all comes down to a clear 3-step solution. First up is education. People at every level need to understand the philosophy behind FIDIC, not just memorize the clauses. Second, adaptation. This is the big one. It requires a real, honest-to-goodness cultural and organizational shift, a commitment to leaving that old top-down system behind. And finally, implementation. You have to actually use the tools you've been given. You have to respect the roles of the engineer and the DAAB and let them do their jobs, not try to undermine them to fit the old way of thinking.
Because at the end of the day, success here isn't about just picking a different contract template. It's about embracing a completely new philosophy, a new way of working that's built on collaboration and trust, not on a power struggle. It's a change in mindset, from being adversaries to being partners.
And all of this leaves us with one last, much bigger question to think about. When a perfect global standard meets a deeply ingrained local culture, who's supposed to bend? Does the standard need to change, or does the culture need to adapt, or is the real answer somewhere in the middle? It's a question that goes way beyond just construction contracts, that's for sure.